In 2019, we began to build our dream.
But the journey started long before you were invited to watch.
We walked a path that spanned nearly 2 decades.
There were times of joy, pain, and everything in between.
Our lives have completely changed, and we're ready to tell you how it happened.
We're not holding back.
Our mistakes, regrets,
What we wish we could change, our best decisions.
and if we do it again, you'll hear it all.
Come back in time with us behind the camera and answer the question, is self-building worth it? All right, guys, welcome back to Mr. Post Frame. I'm Paul, this is Emily, and this series is called Is Self-Building Worth It? And today we're going to be talking plumbing.
Yep, super exciting topic.
Yeah.
Gonna talk a little poo.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more to plumbing than just the poo, but.
Right. This is a hot topic. And it is something that we have found that there can sometimes be like less restrictions on it. It can be something that some people can DIY themselves. And there's a lot of different options. It's a hot debate if you go under your slab or in your attic, all of those things.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. Let's talk about this video was published.
Do you want to talk about design or anything like that?
I mean, I suppose I could. So we have just an architectural firm called Back 40 Buildings. You might have heard of them. We can design your Barndominium. It can be a stick frame, steel frame, or post frame design. We obviously specialize in post frame, which is very critical if you guys are looking to, especially DIY, or you're wanting to work with a builder. You want to present a set of plans that reflects the type of construction that you're hoping to achieve. So we put a lot of thought into our details on these plans and make them as buildable as possible. So,
yes. And then also we have a patron group that is dedicated to self-builders, contractors that want to get into post frame, somebody who wants to GC their own build. We do lives every month. You get to ask questions. It's just a great community. You get to share your build on our app. It's pretty awesome.
Yep. Yeah, it's really awesome. We've added a lot of new lives this year. I do one all about design, and I do one all about budgeting every single month. There's just a lot of good resources for you. So check it out.
Yeah. So anyway, let's jump into this plumbing video.
All right. So we published this. Let's take a look. October 15th, 2019 is when we published this video. It was definitely one of our popular videos that we had. We have quite a few good comments on it. One thing, Chandler's Garage commented 4 years ago that he's about to do is 60 by 40 under slab plumbing. I wonder if he ever got that done. It'd be nice to know.
I'm sure he did. I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess let's just jump into the video and we can talk about it. Plumbing is one of those things, in a post frame, typically you're going to have, your foundation does go below the frost line, but then you typically have a slab inside the house. I personally like to run, all of your drain waste pipe has to go under the floor. But I also like to run all of my water supply lines under the floor as well. Some people don't like to do that, but with PEX these days and a home run system, it's a really great way to get all those lines in before your concrete goes in, and you don't have to worry about running them through the walls and all that kind of stuff. But some people are scared to do that because they're afraid that they're going to lose a line. And there's ways around that if you ever happen to have that problem. But PEX is super, super tough. So as long as you protect the pipes properly, you shouldn't have any trouble. Let's go ahead and start the video. All right, good morning, everybody. I think it is September 30th, last day of September. And I think this is episode 12 of the Mad County Build series. Appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button when you're watching this. Share with your friends. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook. This episode I'm calling Preparing for Concrete. So I got the structure all framed up. I got house wrap on, I got the roofs on, but I got to get this ready for concrete so I can get the concrete in before winter. So now working with the electricians and putting in plumbing. So this is a slab. So on my main floor, all my plumbing has to be underneath the concrete. So this is very important.
Look at that.
I know, it looks so, I remember being at this point, but whenever I lay out plumbing and, you know, I don't want to be too controversial, but some people don't think that a non-certified plumber should be able to do plumbing. I feel like I do a fine job. Our plumbing all works.
It sure does.
But I like to lay out all of my plumbing lines with spray paint on the floor before I start digging, trenching, any of that kind of stuff. So I lay out my fittings, I lay out everything. I'll put up string lines where all of my finished wall is so that I can make sure that my toilet drains, all that kind of stuff are in the exact spot. There's obviously more than one ways to do it, but this works out really well, has worked out really well for me when I have done this. And it kind of, you know, just kind of make sure you have everything where it needs to be before you even start digging.
Yeah, I mean, you made a really clean job site, and that's something that not everybody wants to do because it does require a little bit more effort to level everything out first and then do what you're showing. But it's a lot tidier. It's something that kind of elevates the whole situation.
Yeah, and I mean, we obviously build Barndominiums now, and I get crucified on some of these plumbing videos, especially on Facebook, and nothing against the plumbers. Like they're all about speed. They do this all the time. But like the way that they go about it is much more like organized and frantic, which it works for them. They do it all the time. Mm-hmm. But I just like to take my time, have a nice, clean kind of job site and make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, and that's something I think to note that as with all of the major trades, you don't want to embark on something like this if you have zero experience and zero way of gaining the knowledge. So we've had some people that are like, well, I'll try it. Like, I wouldn't say that plumbing is that simplistic that you can just give it a shot. But there are a lot of great resources out there that you can teach yourself, you know, what to do and how to get it done really, really well. I think that one of the things that we've noticed in all of the plumbing is that if you aren't doing it every day, you just need to be prepared for like 1,000 trips to the hardware store.
Yeah, and that's why I point out that I lay out all of my fittings on the floor.
Yeah.
And because a tradesman is going to come in, they're going to have a truck or a trailer, and it's going to have a box of 2-inch wide. It's going to have a box of 2-inch 90. So they have like extra stuff. So what I do is I'll lay it out with paint on the floor, take my notepad around, and just kind of start and work my way writing down everything I need. And then I usually will add like 5 to 10 extra fittings, each type of fitting.
Yeah.
And then I can take them back when I'm done. That way I'm not, you know, because most of you are probably going to be in a similar location to us that's remote and that, you know, you're not 5 minutes from a hardware store. I mean, luckily we actually
are. Yeah.
Ace here, 8 minutes away, but they're obviously a lot more expensive. But
well, and I think bringing up expense too, I think that's the other reason why maybe you don't see as much time taken, because especially in the last few years, the cost of materials for plumbing has risen exponentially. And so I think that's something to keep in mind, that this is a job of, there's only money in it if there's speed in it. And so that's something you just want to be mindful of, that if you do hire a plumber, you're going to want to have a meeting with them to really map out and communicate your expectations on things, because they just, in order for them to profit, they have to take the path of least resistance for what they're doing.
Right.
And just be prepared. Like, if you want them to do something a very specific way, then you may need to pay them more in order to do that. I think people also come to us a lot and they talk about design, because there's a page in our plans that's a plumbing layout plan. We typically only include main floor, like so under your slab. And hopefully you've caught why. It's because there's a lot of different ways to do this. And so
Right.
kind of explain that a little.
Yeah, so the reason, if you have a set of plans, whether it's from us or somebody else, if you have a slab on grade or post frame with a slab, your drain locations are going to be dimensioned out. So like for toilets, drains for sinks, things like that are going to be dimensioned out, because that is going to be imperative that those, especially toilets, are in the right spot. As far as the second story, those don't need to be dimensioned out, because you're going to have your eye joists or your floor system that you're going to be able to run your drains over to a wall and down to the main chase. So that's pretty common, that you're just going to have to figure that out depending on where the duct work is running, where wiring is running. So that's why those things aren't dimensioned out on the second story, because it's kind of just a waste of time, because they're not going to be using that. And also, we've had questions of why isn't the whole system mapped out under the concrete? Well, there's a few reasons for that. One is if I hired 10 plumbers in here, they would run all of this piping 10 different ways. Second, I don't know where your septic field is going to be when we're doing your plans. So that's going to determine where your high point is, where your low point is. So there's so many variables that you don't know, that you really just need the dimensions for the locations of your drains on that main floor where you have a slab.
And that again is why with any major trade, you do need to understand the trade in order, like no set of plans from us or anybody else is going to completely tell you how to do everything step by step. You do need to actually have some knowledge in order to support what you're looking at on the plans. The plans are to help you identify what you know how to do.
Yeah. And this is a good video, because I talk about, your drain pipes. You need to think when you're running drain pipes, you need to think long sweep elbows or Ys and 45s. And that'll protect you to make sure that you have the right fittings in there. And if you watch this is actually I feel like a really good basic video on laying out your plumbing and doing it. I try to explain, probably don't explain everything, but I explain a lot of the common things. And I dug probably half of this by hand, and then when I got into the garage, because I had to go across 104 feet, so a 1/4 inch per foot drop. By the time I got to the other end of the house, I was 20 plus inches deep, so I wasn't going to dig that by hand, because I at that point I was down below the gravel fill and down into like some really solid soil. So I rented a trencher to kind of get those closed, and then fine-tuned it. But we have a couple really good plumbing videos that we can link. This is one of them, and then I have another that I did on a Barndominium where I kind of go through, how I start out, how I kind of plan it. But you also have to think about your septic system. I like a septic system that has no pumps or anything involved. It's just gravity fed. That way, if there's no power, everything just functions as normal. And so you have to know like the elevation of your septic tank and your leach field to make sure you have enough elevation to get that to gravity feed. I was pretty good, I think, on my top leach field on on our line. I think I had 7 lines. I maybe had a couple inches of leeway. Now all the other ones stepped down because the hill went down, but that top one, it was actually pretty close. So, I had to kind of figure all that out before I even started. Oh yeah, and then another thing I did, which you'll see in this video, is I had no plumbing plan whatsoever. This literally, I was going off what I had drawn up on grid paper. And so I ran multiple mainline vents to the upstairs because I wasn't 100% sure like how our upstairs would go. I had a plan on where rooms and bathrooms and all that was going to be, but I know from doing projects when I get going, I'm like, ooh, this will be cool if I change this. So even though it wasn't necessary, I ran extra vents that could be drains just to give me the option to change things later or as I was building the upstairs, just kind of be able to do whatever I wanted.
Yeah, which that would not be a decision that you could ask like your plumbers to
Right.
make or something like that, because if you're hiring trades out,
You have to have a plan.
yeah, your floor plan needs to be set in stone. You need to not be making any major changes to anything along the way at that point. But if you're DIYing and you're kind of just debating some things, I mean, I don't know that you would do that in the future. You're not necessarily going to do that because we'll probably spend more time creating the floor plan and stuff like that. And we have a lot more knowledge. We've seen a lot more builds and stuff, so. But yeah, you like to have options.
Yeah, I like to be able to change things. And another thing like I'm talking about right here is making sure before you cover anything up, I like to put everything down before I cover it up and then go through and make sure all my fittings are going the right direction. And I know that kind of seems funny, but you could easily put one in backwards, and then in most the time it would probably still work depending on where it was, but you really don't want to have a fitting facing the wrong direction. So there you can see right there where I ran extra lines up the walls.
Looks so nice.
No, you want to take it all apart and go back to that point?
Sure don't.
Any questions, Justin, so far?
I mean, so many questions, but I think your videos will cover a lot of that. But I think a lot of people just, how do I get started? Like, where do I start? I mean, you start with your main line and kind of like where your septic's going to be obviously is important and all that.
Yeah, so the way I started out is I know where my septic tank is going to be, so I know that's where my pipe's going to leave the house. And then I like to make sure I keep my main line perpendicular at 90-degree angles to all the walls, because what happens if you don't do that, say you bring it in and you kind of angle across, all of your fittings are not going to get you to where you need to be. If you can keep it at 90 degrees perpendicular to your walls, then you can break off with 90s, break off with 45s, and it makes life so much easier. So the first thing I do is I lay out my main line depending on where it comes into the house, and make sure I'll take paint, mark out that line. I put my string lines up for all my finished walls where I have bathrooms, things like that. And then I will start at the farthest away from the septic tank and start marking all my lines that are branching off. And I'll get them all painted down. Then I'll lay my fittings out. And then when I start trenching, I start at the farthest part away, because where I start, I'm going to make sure that main drain pipe is just flush with the finished gravel height. That way it gives me the maximum amount of fall and keeps me up as high as I can. Which I think the Sullivan build's a really good one, because it's a smaller build, but I think I talk about that stuff.
And then I'm sure there's a lot of questions about venting and all that. Like, how do you know how big and where and
So I like to use 2-inch vents. So everything has to have a vent. So toilet has to have a vent. Sinks have to have a vent. Everything has to be vented. Your vent is after your trap. So your vent has to be after your trap, because if you think about it, your trap holds water, so that keeps gases from coming back into your house. So if your vent was before the trap, you would have gases being able to get in your house. So the vent has to be after the trap. And everything has to be vented. Now you can have wet vents and all that, but that's getting into the weeds. So you just have to keep that mindset. Everything has to have a vent. It's almost like if you think about a straw and you dip it into the water and you hold the top, it'll probably drain over time, but as soon as you let your thumb off, it's going to vent it and it's going to just come out. So I use 2-inch vents for everything, and I know that's not necessary, but I like using 2-inch vents and 2-inch drain, minimum 2-inch drain pipes for all my sinks, all that, because if you think about it, the only way that drain is not going to drain is if it's completely full. Same thing as if you take a straw and you have it on a side and air is able to get in there at all, it's going to drain. It's essentially venting itself. So I like to use all minimum size 2-inch drains. My main line's always 4 inches. I take 4-inch to toilets in most cases, except for on second floors. I'll use 3-inch just because the 4 inches gets too big. And then all my venting's 2 inches. But that's just the way I like to do it because it gives you the most volume of air. You know, it's going to probably cost you a little bit more. Plumbers are going to use the smallest thing that they can, the code allows them to use, because they're trying to get things done as quickly and as, you know, cheaply as possible as far as materials are concerned, because that's how tradesmen make money.
Yeah. Yeah, which, you know, you just have to keep that in mind. I love this comment that we got from,
Talk about poop and a fly shows up.
yeah, exactly. This comment, this guy can't be a plumber. He's talking about his fittings going the right way. Right there, that tells me he's a handyman. Well,
I am a handyman.
yeah. And if you paid attention, we aren't trying to tell you that we're plumbers.
Yeah.
That's what cracks me up is when people accuse you, they're like, yeah, this guy isn't a plumber. It's like, well, yeah, we never said he was. Just so, yeah, but lots of people, you know, we've helped quite a few people over the years with this original video. Lots of folks are saying that it really helped them.
There's lots of positive.
Yeah, lots of positive comments. You'll always get that one guy that hops in the comments and is like, clearly you don't know code and things like that. But then nobody ever gives you supporting, like nobody ever tries to be supportive of it. They just are like making blanket statements and then walking away, which I think goes to prove that like you can't necessarily believe everything that you're reading in comments and stuff like that, because like that's not educating anybody to just
And the code is
say that.
You know, I'm not saying I've never violated code, because I have, and I've intentionally violated code. So if you're a codesman, that's the way it is. But if you think about the code, it's minimum standards, and there's going to be things in the code that are based off the smallest size vent pipe, the smallest size drain pipe. So again, like there's all kinds of code with a washing machine drain. It has to be minimum 18-inch drop pipe. There needs to be a 4-inch leg that goes over. But if you're using a big enough pipe, it's never going to siphon if you can't get that 4-inch leg in there or an 18-inch drop, because there's not enough volume of water. So there are things, I'm not saying don't go by the code, but there are things in the code that aren't going to keep your house from working. Same thing with like the electrical code. Like they consider my railing wall space and I have to have an outlet in the floor every 12 feet, but I argued with them that I didn't want an outlet along the railing, but I had to put it in because it's code. So there's just things in there that you're going to be required to do if you have to go through inspections, and then there's things that you're not going to have to do if you don't. So
Yeah, building code is to create a minimum standard. It's not to create the superior product.
And I will also tell you, I've had plumbing inspectors accept stuff based on their interpretation, and another inspector deny the same exact thing because of his interpretation. So, you know, there's always that too. It can get pretty frustrating.
Yeah, because everybody you're working with is, you know, everybody's human. Everybody has their own ideas and stuff like that. And but that's just something to keep in mind. I mean, again, the less restrictions if you are thinking about DIYing, pick a location that has less restrictions. It'll go a lot smoother.
Yeah, just take the mindset of Ha and Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah, just keep getting away from people. But one of the things, so, you know, a lot of these comments, you know, the idea of something being covered up and it making it really difficult to have access to it makes people nervous. So prior to getting the slab put in and things like that, like what can a person do to make sure that everything is going to function properly?
Yeah, so I mean, if you have an inspection, like they're going to make sure that you can't cover anything up before the inspection. So they're going to come in, they're going to tell you what you need to fix or do differently. If you don't have inspections, lay it all out and have somebody else come in and take a look, get a second set of eyes on it, maybe, you know, to see if you missed anything. You know, one thing that a lot of places will require is a pressure test on your drain piping. So, you know, you have to plug the exit where it leaves the house. You have to fill it up with water. And it has to hold that volume of water for, I think, 24 hours. You can do that. You can get on Amazon and buy the bulb that plugs the hole and test it. Just go through those things. One thing I did with all of my water supply lines, they're all PEX, is I plugged the one end and I made a little pressure tester and I put it under 50 pounds of pressure and left it for, a couple hours. And I went down each line making sure that it held the pressure.
Yeah. Yes, inspections or not, you're going to want to make sure that everything holds pressure for sure.
Yeah.
Because you are going to end up covering it up, and it would be difficult to try to get back to that. So you do that with plumbing, you do that with the in-floor heat. It's just smart to test all of those things.
Yeah. We'll talk about like how I run my water lines. So there's multiple ways to supply your house with water. I like a home run system and then a manifold in my utility room. When I designed this house, I have my utility room in a location that most of our bathrooms, kitchen are pretty close to the utility room. It's not very far runs, and I did that intentionally. Now, if you have a bathroom that's 60 feet away from your utility room, maybe you want to run one big main loop and then branch off of that. If you do that, I would keep all of my tees outside of the concrete. Like I would come up out of the wall or out of the floor into a wall where I would branch off and then I would go back down. That way you don't have any joints underneath the concrete. That's just my preference. I'm okay with waiting 20 seconds for hot water. Some people aren't, but there's also other ways around that too. They make these little units that heat the water at your location. You can put them under the sink. You can put them on the backside of showers. So there's lots of different ways to do it. I like the home run system because I have no joints under the floor. I have a manifold in my utility room. It's nice, it's clean. We don't get pressure drops when somebody flushes the toilet in the same bathroom because they have their each own individual line. I can go into that utility room and I can isolate any line in the house.
Yeah.
If you have a second story, you can easily run all of your water lines in the I-joist. Like a house of our size where we have so many bathroom stuff, there would get to be a lot of lines in there. Another option is if you spray in your walls and your ceiling with closed-cell spray foam and you have like just a closed-in envelope, you can run them in the attic. The code does allow you to run water lines in the attic as long as you have an insulation plan. I don't feel like that's a great option, but we just had a plumber do that in the house that we're building, and we're insulating all of those lines, and then there's insulation over the top of those.
Yeah.
So,
Which that's something that we're requiring as the builder. So you want to keep that in mind, because an insulation plan, again, is up for interpretation. Somebody could say, well, whatever insulation is up there is the plan. And so the pipes don't need to be insulated. But
just look at Texas when they had that freeze.
Yeah.
All their lines were in the attic. And PEX is very durable. PEX A, PEX B. Very rarely will it bust if it freezes, but you still don't want to have a line freeze and not have water, right? I'm still going to get, the way I look at it as a builder is like, I'm still going to get a call if all of a sudden the water's not running. Right.
Yeah, because you build a custom home and you expect that every single time you turn on the faucet, water comes out.
Yeah.
Whether it's 20 below outside or not, you need water when you want water. You didn't build a cheap home.
Yeah. So, those are all things to consider, but I would not be nervous about running water lines underneath the slab at all. I've been asked a couple times, hey, could you sleeve your lines? And you could definitely do that. It's going to cost you extra money. But I guess if you did sleeve them all, you could, and you lost, for some reason a line broke, you could pull that one out and push another one in. So there is that option. I might try to do that on a smaller scale build, just to kind of see how well they do pull through and all that, just to kind of test it out. But it would definitely work. It would just it would just be a lot more effort.
Have we looked into what's the likelihood, or why would something go wrong? So why would something go wrong over time, immediately? What are the reasons why somebody would find themselves in this spot?
That's a good question. So when I dig my trenches underneath, I'll put my lines in and then you backfill. Like I insulate the line. So now I have a layer of protection around my PEX tubing, which is extremely tough. But then you can backfill with sand over the top of them. And once the concrete's poured, there's going to be no friction or like weight bearing that's going to like drive a rock through your pipe. So as long as you make it through like putting them in the ground and you pressure test them, it should be fine.
Right.
Now if it was CPVC or something like that was brittle, then or copper, I would be nervous. But PEX is just so resilient, like it's so tough that, you're putting that line under the ground, you're backfilling, you're insulating around it, you're backfilling over the top of it, you're putting 2-inch rigid board insulation over the top of it. So even when the concrete guys are there, they're not like putting any pressure on it.
Right.
So the probability, if it's done properly, is very, very low.
Right.
And when I'm saying like, that's why from the start of your build, you prepare your site properly. We're on well compacted soil, because where you could have problems if you don't have a compacted base and then over time it starts settling and things start moving, that's when you could have trouble. But that's how I will always do it, because I like getting all of that done, and then hooking everything up is really quick and easy once you get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good explanation. So to go to a bunch of effort of like sleeving all of the lines and things like that as long as if you're willing to go to that effort, then hopefully you've been willing to do all of the other things prior to and after that properly.
Yeah, because here's another situation. People will always say to me, well, if I run it under there and I lose line, what am I going to do? Well, once it's under there, it's protected. There's no danger of you running a screw in it. There's no danger of you running a nail in it. There's no any of that. If you run it through your walls or your ceiling and the drywall guys run a screw in there, you're going to have water all over. You're going to have all kinds of damage. You're going to have to cut out drywall. You're going to have to locate it. So it's going to be a crazy amount of work to fix. Now, yes, you can fix it, but take a home run situation. And for some reason you would lose a line. I have multiple lines running to a bathroom. So I can easily, if I did have a problem, I could easily cut the drywall out and tee off and take it to where I need it.
Sure.
Now, no matter what the case is, it's going to be a pain in the butt, right?
Right.
But in the scene, like that's the thing. No matter what the case is, if that scenario happens to you, it's going to suck. So you're just going to have to figure it out. But I like them under the ground because now I don't have to worry about, Emily when she wants to hang a picture and she drives a 3-inch trim nail into the wall.
I'm not allowed to hang things.
But those things happen.
Yeah.
They happen a lot,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I would say your probability of having a line get broke in your wall versus in the floor is probably higher.
Yeah.
Because it's accessible to screws and nails and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're probably going to have more people that are going to have an opportunity to cause damage.
Yeah. And I've also seen it where, tradesmen, they get in like a war with each other and they'll just cut each other's pipes out of the way because like, oh, he ran his pipe through there. I got to run my duct through here. So they'll just saw it out. And run their duct through there. And then that guy comes through and he's like, well, fine. And he drills a hole through the ductwork, shoves his pipe back up in there. Like, so you won't have any of that problems either.
Right. Exactly. Which, as I've talked about quite often with our patrons, the recommendation for when you are going to bring in your major trades is that you'll want to have your HVAC come through. Now, this is after interior framing, so we're not quite there yet, but bring in HVAC first. They can run all their ductwork. They take up the most room. They don't have as many options. Then bring through plumbing, then bring through electrical.
I did it. I knew.
You didn't do it in that order, but you were the only one handling everything.
Correct.
If you're bringing in a subcontractor, that is the order that we recommend that you bring them in.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Right.
Because they're going to watch, they're going to be like, well, that's not what he did.
Right.
I had my own plan and I knew what I wanted to do. So I knew where I needed room for.
If you cut the plumber's lines, it's because you were mad at you.
Right. I'll beat his butt.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, well, I think that wraps this up. It's always a really big topic for folks to see plumbing in action and understand it. So hopefully you guys have learned some more about it. Enjoyed our banter.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2019, October 15th. That was 2 days after our girl's birthday. One of them would have been 2 and the other one would have been 6 at that point.
Yeah, they were still little.
Tiny, tiny.
Is that it?
I think that's
you have
it.
Any questions? All right, guys. So we will leave a link to a couple of these good plumbing videos, underground plumbing videos. So check those out. As always, we appreciate you watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, share this with your friends, and we will catch you on the next video.